Hello and welcome to the CX Files for 8th of September 2022. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
And I'm Peter Ryan, based in Montreal, Canada. Mark, great to have you here. And we've got quite an internationally themed podcast today that we're going to share with our listeners.
I think both today and next week as well, because we're looking at different regions of the world, the development of BPO, recent current events, and what's going on. So why don't you introduce today's episode then?
Absolutely. So, Mark, as many of the listeners might know from LinkedIn posts that have been going around the past few days, the Republic of Georgia, and specifically their economic development wing, Enterprise Georgia, has been looking to try and gain more awareness as a CX delivery location of choice. Now, I think we can all agree that it's not necessarily been the first destination historically on the minds of both outsourcers and the buyers of outsourcing services. However, there's been a concerted effort the past couple of years to position Georgia as an alternative destination in the European nearshore. And to that end, Enterprise Georgia and its affiliates have decided to organize a visit by a series of influencers from different parts of the world, primarily North America, as well as Western Europe, to come and see on the ground what Georgia has to offer as a location from which CX services can be delivered. Now, we're very fortunate today that two of the participants who are taking part in this influencers visit, Lynda Arsenault from Halifax, Nova Scotia, and Sean Goforth, who is based in Mexico City, took some time out of their visit to chat with us. I conducted an interview with them yesterday at the end of the different site tours and the different meetings that they had over the course of Tuesday. I'm sorry, I forgot it was a long weekend this week and my schedule's still messed up. That said, it was the first full day of meetings, and they conducted a number of different discussions with both the government and the different outsourcers on the ground, and we were able to catch up with them to find out a little bit about what their impressions were thus far.
Well, and we're recording this on September 7th. The podcast will go out at midnight tonight for the 8th. And I believe that Sean and Lynda are still actually in Georgia. So, I mean, maybe you could just give us a quick highlight before we do go into the main interview. You know, what were some of their main observations?
I think, first of all, they said Georgia is, from a technology and technical skills standpoint, extremely advanced. One of the things that really came through from both Lynda and Sean was the level of education and the focus around technology and engineering that you find in Georgia that's been very important in terms of propelling it to the forefront of BPO and CX delivery. Second thing is the fact that you've got a very, very pro-business government, and something that Lynda especially has got a strong background in is evaluating different locations based on the administrations that are in place at the state, city, and national level. And something that came up in the discussions I had with them, Lynda did bring this up, was the fact that when you're in Georgia, you can count on an economic development agency that will literally pull out all the stops to get you up and running and get you certified as a business in a very, very rapid amount of time. And the standpoint as well of the outsourcers, there were visits that they conducted with outsourcing operations on the ground, and the extent to which these providers that have set themselves up in Georgia, international players, are so happy with not just the process of getting set up, but what they've been able to experience since they've been in Georgia delivering service for different parts of the world. Language skills, certainly very important too, and we'll hear a lot about the multilingual capabilities that you find in Georgia, English and German especially, obviously very important. So I think from what we've been seeing so far on LinkedIn and what we'll be hearing in the podcast today, for all intents and purposes, the visit has been a success, both in terms of the organization of the event, but also in terms of the mind share that the influencers have been able to glean thus far.
I think that, certainly from my perspective, and I haven't been on the ground with the guys out there. Hopefully, though, if we just before we were recording, we were talking about an event possibly in London in November. So if that ends up going ahead, then I'm sure that maybe we'll end up talking to the team from Georgia then. But I think that the two questions that I would be asking if I was on this trip would be around the size, the population size. I mean, Tbilisi is only about 1 million people. I think the entire country is only about 3 million people. So how can you realistically scale up a very large operation there? And if we're not talking about large operations, then do they have particular expertise in more niche areas? And then, of course, there's the geopolitics as well. I mean, being next to Russia at the moment with the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, I guess, that would give any investor pause for thought about whether this is exactly the right time to be going in there. And of course, Georgia's got a history with Putin. I mean, 14 years ago, there was a standoff. And I think that even today, food and drink exports are not going between Georgia and Russia. Certainly products like Georgian wine isn't allowed to be exported. So, there's still some conflict there.
There, very much so. And I think that we're going to be hearing a lot about some of these challenges in the discussion with Lynda and Sean today, potentially even a few comments about Georgian wine, which from what I've been led to believe, the influencer community has been enjoying since they've been there.
All right. Well, why don't we hear about how much they've been enjoying their time there and how some of these doubts could be answered. So let's go straight to that interview.
Sounds good. We've got a really special CX Files this week. As many listeners will be aware of, based on what's been appearing on LinkedIn, there is a site familiarization visit going on in the Republic of Georgia currently with a large number of global CX influencers and outsourcing influencers that have made their way to Tbilisi, as well as some destinations further out of the capital city, to find out a little bit about what's going on in that country from the perspective of its CX outsourcing community. Now, we're really lucky today to have two of those participants joining us. We've got Lynda Arsenault, who joins us. Her home base is in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and Sean Goforth, who works for Ryan Strategic Advisory as the Director of Syndicated Research and who is based in Mexico City. Thanks very much to you both for taking a few minutes out of your very busy schedule in Georgia to have a chat with the CX Files today.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
It's always good to talk to you both. You've been previous guests on the pod, and getting your take on what's happening on the ground in Georgia is really important. Obviously, it's not been the most well-known destination for BPO or for CX services. So, Lynda, starting with you, what are your initial impressions of Georgia as a destination for performing customer experience management or any aspect of outsourcing?
I don't know if I could put this positive experience into one podcast. I think it might have to be multiple podcasts, because what I've seen so far is a combination of a friendly business working environment, political stability, ease of doing business, strategically located, competitively priced, in great tax rate, free trade agreements. I could go on, and it really can be summarized by one-stop shop as well with Enterprise Georgia.
That's fantastic. And that one-stop shop, I think, is really important in terms of marketing Georgia as a destination. Sean, from your perspective, as somebody who's also had the opportunity of visiting a large number of different locations, what have you been finding on the ground? What are your impressions, and what have you been hearing some of the other participants who are on the trip talking about as you've had the chance to visit some of the leisure activities, as well as finding out a little bit more about the professional environment in Georgia?
Well, I mean, I share Lynda's enthusiasm. This is an overwhelming value proposition in the sense that you have extraordinarily high degree of English proficiency, alongside that of other in-demand languages, including German. And this is packaged in a country that offers a really sublime environment for living, for quality of life. It's very green, beautiful metro areas with lots of public transport, and the IT infrastructure is frankly just surprising. So at this point, in recent days, I've spent time in Tbilisi. I've spent time 30 miles outside of Tbilisi. I've spent time at monasteries that are 2 hours bus ride outside of Tbilisi. And what's remarkable about all these places is that you stop and you stand by the roadside and you still have 4G connectivity. That's with you everywhere. And that is, it's tremendous peace of mind as you're getting to know a new place, but it's a huge enhancement for any outsourcer and frankly any firm that's considering an operation in the region.
Now, Sean, I want to stick with you for just 1 second here. Obviously, you're familiar with many different destinations in Europe's nearshore. In fact, most recently, you wrote a very well read and very well downloaded report for Ryan Strategic Advisory based on Europe's nearshore. What, in your opinion, when we're looking at Georgia, distinguishes it from some of the other countries within that region? We've been hearing a lot recently about Poland, which was ranked in our most recent survey as the second most favored offshore destination in the world amongst buyers. There's been a lot of chatter about Serbia recently, especially around German language that you alluded to a few minutes ago. What makes Georgia stand out?
Well, that's an excellent question, Peter. So Poland obviously has tremendous human talent, tech talent, and there's widespread English proficiency, as there is widespread tech talent, human talent, and English proficiency in Georgia. I think one of the things that really impact you when you're here is just talking to the businesses that are here and seeing how quickly and streamlined the setup process is, and just how impressive the government is in approving businesses to launch and to expand. So virtually you commit all of one day to getting a business license in Georgia. And then when you look to expand, it's quick and easy. So it's easy to start, it's easy to grow. And at each step of the way, there is a very low burden for taxes that the government is going to retain. So this is a very business-friendly environment. And I think that's a major differentiator. Once there is greater familiarity with Georgia, this is going to be something that really excites a lot of foreign investors.
I'd like to mention, Peter, a few stats that I could leverage on what Sean is saying, and that's labor productivity growth of 8.5%, a total workforce of 1.5 million, an unemployment rate of 18%. That going along with a service-oriented business environment, high quality talent, and a flexible labor code, it's an ideal nearshore destination.
But Lynda, that brings up a point I was going to ask you about. As somebody who's managed foreign direct investment for a province in Canada, as somebody who's worked as an advisor on where companies should be locating in different parts of the world, how does Georgia stack up compared to other jurisdictions, whether it's states or countries that you've had the chance to visit or you've had the chance to get familiar with over the years?
With all of what we've mentioned so far today, it's an ideal location. It's got the talent, it's got the location, it's got they don't like to say low cost, it's got a competitive cost advantage. And I would agree with that in everything that I've heard. But it also has a welcoming business environment for BPOs, ITOs. It has Enterprise Georgia, which will take a business and set them up for business success before they arrive. Once they arrive, make the key introductions for a business. And that includes, setting them up with a lawyer to discuss the legalities of doing business, a tax accountant to discuss taxes, and real estate agents, and partnership opportunities with the universities. And that goes back to, again, I can't reiterate this point enough, and that's one-stop shop.
So you both had the opportunity to visit one of the outsourcers that's operating on the ground today. Lynda, maybe give some impressions about your visit to that site and talk a little bit about what motivated them to come into Georgia to set up shop.
Yeah, that would be Majorel. And they have just a world-class operation with 3,000 plus FTE. They have 8 clients and growing. They have 4 sites. They also mentioned the benefits of working with Enterprise Georgia, and they have no problem finding talent, highly educated talent, in fact, of staff that are either pursuing higher education or they come into the position as an educated individual. I believe that the average age is around 26. So once again, they tap into the new graduates and the large talent pool that's easily accessible, and wanting that first job and wanting to actually grow with a world-class BPO like Majorel. They have had a very positive experience in Georgia, and I believe that they are only looking towards more expansion opportunities.
Okay, you both come to the table from North America. Sean, you're originally from the States and you get back there very frequently. Lynda, you're Canadian. I'm curious the extent to which you feel Georgia is a relevant delivery point for American and Canadian enterprises. How relevant is it from the standpoint of a new destination where this work can be done?
Well, Peter, that's a wonderful question. I'm glad you raised it, because while they're supporting certainly German, they're supporting Russian, they're supporting Spanish, they're supporting French, they're supporting a lot of English. And what's impressive about what they're doing here is they're taking it from sort of inbound customer care, a lot of the stuff that we're familiar with, all the way up to content moderation. And this content moderation is being done in English for clients that we're familiar with. So, this is a compelling destination for many of these high demand CX functions.
Got it.
Also,
okay,
I'd like to mention that it's very low attrition here as well.
That's great as well. Certainly attrition is the plague of the outsourcing industry, especially from the CX side. That's great news and really a good competitive advantage that Georgia has in that regard. So final question for you both, maybe Lynda leading off with you. Obviously, there's been a lot of positive vibes you've gotten from your visit so far. Obviously, there has been a great deal that Georgia has demonstrated it has to offer. What do you both see as the competitive challenges Georgia is likely to face moving into 2023 and beyond?
I think some of the competitive challenges will be to attract an abundance of global investment opportunities, which are going to happen because as soon as Enterprise Georgia gets the word out, along with the 15 influencers and analysts that are here, we're all going to do this work together and really put Georgia on the map. I guess, with the talking about the elephant in the room, that when things get a bit better, I think there'll be an influx of inward investment.
So really it's managing the growth at that point.
Exactly.
Okay. Sean, any last thoughts in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of headwinds, the major one that the Georgians are aware of is frankly familiarity, raising the country's profile. Beyond that, let's face it, there's the reality that this is a small country of 4 million people in a region in which Russia's invasion of Ukraine has cast doubts about the Caucasus. This is, they're managing this well. This is not something that concerns people walking around on the streets, but it's going to be an automatic concern that foreigners who are not familiar with the country may have. So, educating those foreigners about the opportunities, the value proposition, and the unique heritage of Georgia is going to be part of the task in helping the industry develop in this country.
But it's interesting, talking about familiarity. I was taking a look at the most recent Ryan Strategic Advisory Front Office CX Omnibus survey right before we hopped on our discussion today. And funnily enough, in terms of familiarity and favorability, Georgia actually fares very well in a few different demand markets. Germany is one, France is one. Interestingly enough, Australia is too. So the country may be a little bit further ahead than those decision makers in the government think, which is great news. It's nice to be in a position where you can move forward and you do have that level of name recognition, even if it's just in a few different demand markets. But it sounds like the future is looking very promising for Georgia. And we thank you both for taking time out of the schedule to chat with us today on the CX Files. Obviously, the listenership is going to be fascinated by what's happening, not just in regards to the familiarization visit that you're undertaking, but also in terms of the future of Georgia as a CX alternative. So thank you both very much.
Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.